welcome on to Searching for Mana.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Pleasure to have you on the show, Sendi. Fuller introduction, we have Sendi Young, who is the MD of Europe with Ripple as of just about a year ago.
Correct, yeah.
Appointed into this massive remit. Little bit of background, studied economics at Brown, masters in business from Harvard, good collection there. Worked at large corporations such as MasterCard, most recently, HSBC, and also global consulting firms. Part of the 30% Club campaign group to increase gender diversity on boards and at C-suite level as well. I'm going to just read the announcement that was made with your appointment because it's cool. Today, Ripple is thrilled to announce the appointment of Sendi Young as Managing Director of its European operations. In the midst of rapid growth, Sendi will oversee strategy and champion the expansion of Ripple's global financial network technology. Lots more in that, that piece of content that went out, but it gives us some type of idea of the scale and how exciting this role is. Sendi, if you could talk to us about, obviously been there for a year, what it is that you're up to right now with Ripple, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So just for those that may not be familiar, just to clarify, Ripple is the company, and RippleNet is the payments network that we've developed over the last few years, leveraging crypto and blockchain to address a lot of the inefficiencies in the payments network today, particularly in the cross-border payments. We have, that's kind of our bread and butter and historically what we're known for, but recently we've expanded that RippleNet into more of a platform of tokenized services, essentially to help other companies to give them the capabilities to bring them to that crypto-enabled future, which we see, of course. So what we've been really up to recently is we've seen a massive growth in our RippleNet cross-border payments network, but also expansion of that into more crypto services to enterprises. And we've been also focusing on building out services, programs, capabilities to help developers also to build on the XRP ledger.
Thank you. Let's try and cut that up a little bit. So you've been seeing huge increase in scale. Could we have some context? So some numbers around this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a few years back, really Ripple is one of the very first companies to focus on solving the real world challenges using crypto and blockchain technologies. We've never been really into the sort of hypes and speculations and, looking around the $130 trillion cross-border payments market has been full of inefficiencies, right? It's really created, before the internet, right? It's very inefficient, payments get stuck, you don't know when it's going to arrive, it's very costly. So essentially what we have done is we created a network to help address some of these problems. And today we have about run rate of $15 billion worth of flows going in, hundreds of customers over 55 countries around the world, standing into about 70 countries. We've opened up new markets recently, Dubai, in UAE, and Japan, for example. So there's been a massive growth. We have, again, it's not sometimes people come and ask me like, is there proof of concept? Can I say it's live and running with hundreds of customers and billions flowing through it.
Maybe we could take one example of a conversion that's happened recently. So a client would have existed through one of the incumbents, and then your proposition, they've transferred over, and why? Could you talk us through an example, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, kind of to take a step back and understand kind of the inefficiencies we're talking about, right? Today, about $10 trillion just sitting in accounts around the world waiting for a payment to be made in that one country in the right currency, right? The typical way of money transfer companies, banks, the way they make payments is they park the right currency in the right country so that they can do that, as kind of real time and the right time as possible. But as I said, it's $10 trillion, which is very inefficient, right? Sitting there doing nothing, idle. About 6% of payments that are sent globally get stuck. Nobody knows where they are. So there's a lot of massive problems. It still takes about 2 to 3 days to send a payment, depending on where you are around the world. So there's a lot of those inefficiencies, and an example of kind of what we bring to the table with RippleNet, and specifically the on-demand liquidity solution on RippleNet, which essentially uses XRP, which is a digital asset, as a bridge to move money, to move fiat around. What it brings is real-time settlement, not having to, the financial institutions no longer need to park these funds. There's 10 trillion around the world. They can use that funds instead to fuel their growth, grow their companies. Real-time, it's 24/7, 365 days, right? So somebody wants to plan the payment Christmas morning, it can still get there. So those are the 24/7, 365 liquidity, real-time settlements, are some of the efficiencies that we bring to customers.
So I appreciate why that's awesome, but let's just consider that Angela Warhead, my mum's the biggest fan of this show. And so we're educating her right now, and me, how that's possible technically. Mm-hmm. How are you achieving that versus the traditional mechanism where there's a 3-day pause? How have you been able to do that? Can you technically and simply explain that, please?
Yeah. So the traditional, still kind of the most common method is using correspondent banking and the Swift messaging network. Yeah. What that means is for money to move around, there's a series of banks in the chain essentially that are all doing foreign exchange and have their commissions and fees along the way, and that causes a lot of that additional costs and inefficiency and time that it takes to move money from one country to another, from one currency to another. In very simple terms, in terms of when we use RippleNet, or if in a financial institution use RippleNet, essentially they're using the digital asset XRP to move, and XRP, because it's a blockchain, it moves on the blockchain, it literally settles within a few seconds.
Yes.
So we provide that sort of efficiency and the time benefits from that angle.
So there you go, Mum. That's why you need to be bought into the blockchain. There's not, just to be cynical, a reason that the incumbents were creating that lag. There wasn't some benefit in kind for them, was there? Or they just technically couldn't make it happen in real time? Which one?
I think, it's probably more complex than that. It's an evolution of the financial services and the payments infrastructure, right? Infrastructure is large, it takes a lot of investment, and it's been for years. And again, the current system today was still built in the pre-internet era, right? And it's not so fit for how we live today, right? We want everything, including payments, right? At the click of our fingers, more global, global trade has obviously boomed over the many years. And everything is very instant. So it's just really the evolution of the infrastructure hasn't really kept up with the way we live, and not as people, consumers, but also the way businesses operate today, which again is also more global, on demand, etc. So our view is very much around sort of movement of value, right? Seamless movement of value, just like how internet has really essentially freed up information, made it accessible kind of to everyone, made information move very easily, right? I send an email to you and you get it instantly, whereas it's not the same for money or for any value on the internet today. So what I find is quite interesting is kind of blockchain and crypto technologies create that opportunity to basically create more digital native experiences and digital native ways of moving value, which are again more fit with how we just live our lives today. Because essentially payments is just an enabler of the various things we want to do: entertain, trade, watch a movie, talk to, send money to a friend, etc.
And you hinted on just how large this market opportunity is. Where is, and like crudely number-wise, so what is the TAM? What's the total opportunity of the market? Where is Ripple? What is the number it's at? And how far do you think it can go? Or do you think many parties will take the whole market?
Yeah. For the entire market, it's hard to give a number. The cross-border payment space is about $130 trillion, but that's not the only space, kind of we are looking at, right? So, we recently launched a liquidity hub solution, for example, which will bring more ability for companies, for enterprises, to source digital assets from the market at the optimal prices and in the most efficient way. That addresses, kind of a slightly different set of markets. So it's very hard to give a number. But what I can say is, over the last sort of in 2021 and same continuing in Q1, we've had the business at Ripple, happy to say that has been really booming. We've doubled transactions, doubled the volumes flowing on the network. A lot of new partners sort of joined in. We've had recent announcements, for example, Modular, which is a big brand in the UK, obviously, which basically we're enabling together with Modular, we're enabling anybody literally around the world paying into the UK and Europe in a, again, more efficient way, cost-effective way. Similarly, Finci is a recent announcement we've made as well, which is a Lithuania-based payment service provider, both for remittance, sort of peer-to-peer remittance space, also business-to-business space. Again, similarly, so there's been sort of a lot of activity and a lot of the business is booming, I think.
Well, firstly, fantastic to hear. And then that's interesting. I strongly believe that a benefit of the Web3 mentality is collaboration, and not just between individuals, but between organizations. And we see a lot of that. And so is the time now where it's inevitable that Ripple is the leader in this from a Web3 perspective? And so you're getting, which are brilliant fintechs such as Modular, to become partners, so they have your technology, your distribution, all the credentials, but also it allows them to then be in real time as well. And so it's part of the strategy, particularly for you, to build out that partnership ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. Partnerships and ecosystems critical. I mean, again, maybe today it may not sound so groundbreaking, but when honestly Ripple started, right, when, especially the crypto landscape was a lot more sort of, I would say maybe marginalized and, Bitcoin maximalists, and everybody kind of had their own spaces. But Ripple is very much from the beginning said, look, we're not here to break anything, right? We're not here to like kind of disrupt and get rid of. It's really an evolution. We're here to work with the ecosystem and evolve and improve things with the new technologies like blockchain, crypto that is emerging. So from the very, very first days, Ripple has always worked with governments, regulators, others, other fintechs in the ecosystem, banks, fintechs, you name it. It's always been a very much partnership mentality.
Yeah.
And today it continues, right? We have part of our business has created, for example, a private version of the XRP ledger, which allows governments basically issue and manage central bank digital currencies. Again, we have, partnership with government of like Bhutan and Palau that's, out in the public. Good examples, we're part of Digital Pound Foundation in the UK, again, working with the non-profits and the governments to help the thinking and design and implementation of potentially digital pound. So there are many, many examples, but I think it has really helped, in a way, differentiate Ripple as well in the market, because now, some of the more traditional players in the market, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, would not sit and have a conversation about having a digital asset in the payment flow. Today, coming to us and saying, well, we see the future is going to crypto, come help us, and we're becoming essentially the partner of choice for financial institutions who are looking to transform their payments with crypto and blockchain, and really that original, I guess, approach and collaborative approach has really, I think, helped us fuel that growth that I was just talking about.
Amazing, because when I hear you talk about the money being stuck, but it could be being moved around quicker, then immediately thought, well, government's going to be very interested in that happening, right? It's going to stimulate the economy more. And so you've got two different sides, broadly speaking, where some have not gone down the path of paying attention to building the relationships in the powers that be in governments, and then on the other side, and so Ripple has gone and made sure that it's compliant in various territories. Are there any barriers there for that to scale now? So you mentioned the UK. So I think we're definitely at the top of the list in terms of backing, wanting to get behind fintech, blockchain, crypto. Do you see a bigger relationship with the UK government?
Yeah, I mean, I think UK is interesting. I think UK is really well placed, I think, to be that kind of leading crypto hub and innovation center, right? We do already have a history here of, being hub of fintech and very progressive regulations. I think like open banking, etc. that have really fueled. We have the talent, we have investment, we have the infrastructure. So I think we're really well placed. I think in terms of, it's been quite interesting. Government has talked about wanting to be that crypto hub. At the same time, we hear sort of some other noises in the market saying, crypto is, for criminals. So there's been a little bit of mixed messaging recently, which a little bit worries me. But I think, I do certainly hope that there'll be, we'll continue on that kind of progressive path to provide more sort of clear regulations and frameworks to help the industry, to let the industry innovate, while protecting consumers. And so, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Well, Sendi, I think that brings me and the audience nicely up to speed on the company and its clearly proven user case and some other interesting stuff. Just before we go back through some of your journey and bio, would like to understand internally what you came into with this appointment. So, I don't have yet an understanding of the scale or the numbers around the team, how it's structured, both geographically, working hybrid, so that we can really understand the culture that you are obviously the MD for Ripple in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. To give some flavor. Ripple is a truly global company, which is, one of the things kind of attracted me to it. 9 offices around the world, about 500 or so employees, again, spread around the world. And particularly in terms of the Europe office here, we have a very good sort of spread across the different parts of the business, whether we're talking about the payments network or kind of the Ripple X side of the business, which is more helping developers, supporting the developers to build on the XRP ledger. We have about, at the moment, just over sort of 60 people sort of based out of Europe. It's a very, I would say, diverse, which again is an element that's very, interesting and attractive for me. People from traditional bank, tech, consumer tech, B2B. It's a very, very kind of hybrid environment. It's been great.
And how have you been directing that team with it so distributed? Are you back-to-back on Zooms?
Yes, back-to-back Zooms have definitely been part of my life for a long time. But to be fair, I think we have now recently found a really, really nice balance. Obviously, everybody is talking to back to office, etc. What's the approach? We have adopted, initially we were thinking of going in with a more sort of 3 days a week in the office kind of approach, and that's really evolved into more of a let's be flexible first. And I think we found a really nice mix in between the offices. We have really great space, so we've managed to stay open actually all through COVID because we just had so much space. But essentially, we have a lot of interesting things happening in the office that bring people together to create value, to really give them an opportunity to network, share ideas, whether that would be offsites or drinks or a crepe stand to get together in the morning and share ideas over some delicious pancakes, essentially. So people have a choice to work remotely, stay at home as they find if that's better for the quality of their work. And they have the opportunity to come in and participate in a lot of these, activities that are actually created for people to, really find that connection and the network again. So I'm really pleased, actually, kind of where we are today, that we can kind of cater to what everybody needs. Because one thing we've certainly found out right through the COVID and this kind of shift towards more, let's say, remote working or flexible working is, everybody's needs are a bit different, right? Whether, for personal reasons or, COVID-related things, and we need to kind of cater to everyone to get the best of everyone, really.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a recent study on what makes a great leader, and there's, of course, just a myriad of requisites, but one of the prominent ones is empathy. Mm-hmm. And where empathy can come from is a diversity of experience from the actual leader, mm-hmm. because of course that allows them to consider things through different lenses. So it sounds like you've got an incredible skill there where you've been able to work out there's different needs, different requirements, as long as everybody's happy and productive and the organisation is, we're great. So let's try and work out where that might have come from, mm-hmm. Sendi. please do go back as far as possible to give us some type of understanding and idea about, you know, who you were when you were growing up and the experiences that you had in family, school, from potentially experiences.
Yeah, I think so. I grew up in Istanbul, in Turkey, in the sort of 80s, 90s, and I think that really shaped obviously who I am and you know, some of the decisions I've made, because I've seen kind of the conversations around inflation, right? Economic booms following very quickly by economic busts, kind of that volatility of environment that, you know, sometimes we hear in crypto today is not so foreign to me. I've always, you know, grew up with those stories on TV.
So sorry,
and
what
family.
was, for anyone who doesn't know, what was going on at that time?
Yeah, I mean, Turkey had many cycles of, you know, very fast economic growth, a lot of times with, you know, IMF World Bank support and policies, and very quick kind of declines and high inflations, people losing their wealth overnight very quickly. So that's always been kind of, let's say, top of mind and something I've observed and has been kind of in the discourse. You know, you jump into a taxi and that's what you talk about. So that, I think, created my interest in macroeconomics and really understanding how the world works, etc., which essentially eventually led me when I was in university to get a degree in economics. Yes. And, you know, start my early career in economic consulting as well.
I was watching the Lex Friedman podcast recently, and Michael Sayer was the guest. Mm. So, Bitcoin maximalist. It's about 20-hour long, that podcast. Very interesting philosophy on many different things. But one bit was super interesting. He was saying, if we were to review how well humans have done over the last 100 years in different skill sets, then engineering, we've got like a B+. Like, we've done pretty well there. Okay. Whereas if we were to look at politics, we're probably with a like F-. And with economists, that no one's passed, which is interesting, right? To have this this conversation with you, because as you say, you got interested in macroeconomy, scratching your own itch perhaps from the Turkish experience, and then have gone and worked in the biggest companies in the world, and also consulted into them. So I'm assuming you've had so much more experience than if it was just a careerist in a couple. Much like with headhunting with me as well, that's one of the privileges, is to see so many different companies and try and work out the trends. And then we're at this point now where Web3 is potentially creating a new economy. Mm-hmm. It's quite exciting. I think that's why there's almost a cult following, because there's this hope, well, we could at least get it slightly better now. Mm-hmm. What is your view economically of the benefit from moving from Web 2 to Web 3?
Yeah, great question. There are many, right? So I think one of them is, I think there's definitely a kind of more financial inclusion element there. Absolutely. Has it fully delivered on its promise? It hasn't. It's a very complex topic, obviously. But there's definitely, I mean, if we look at, again, the antiquated today's, you know, financial system that I mentioned, it has left 2 billion people around the world out of the financial system, right? Where no bank accounts, can't get credit, and then that's a, you know. That's
an outstanding stat.
Yeah.
Then there's 8 billion people.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
a quarter.
That's a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot. And I think, and again, as the way we're living changes, right? Again, somewhere between what we call that Web3 is really somewhere the virtual and the physical is kind of mixing a bit more. And I think, you know, it's an opportunity essentially to participate in that sort of digital journey as the way our lives evolve. And we've seen many markets, right, with digital wallets, for example, like, you know, jump and speed up their evolution, you know, not going into credit cards, but directly a lot of, you know, economies in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, going straight to wallets and you know, doing payments already and, you know, with topping up through their mobile phones. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there that exist to improve kind of financial inclusion as well.
So it makes me wonder, you know, before you moved into Rippleware, it feels like it's full of purpose for that economist in you. And that's like, you know, hope of a leveling up. Was there a disengagement in those roles?
Disengagement in terms of...
I think, perceptionally you would have been successful. You were on a good trajectory.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was multiple things from your own skill set that
Yeah.
you were acquiring and learning and developing and stretching and so on and so forth. But was there a disengagement?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think for me what was kind of driver to move more into the blockchain crypto space was more like, especially when I was at, HSBC, I sort of first time dipped my toes in the payments sort of infrastructure and looking at like an overnight cash, investments product and really understanding complexities of the global cash management and payment sort of a system. And then MasterCard, I was really working very closely with a lot of the fintechs and startups in that ecosystem to kind of help banks adopt some of those newer, either technologies like artificial intelligence, or help them move into the newer infrastructure like real-time payments.
So it still
or
felt like
banking.
innovating.
Still was innovating. So that was where I got kind of that angle of payments and technology, and I that's really where my kind of realized that's really my passion, and I love it, and I want to continue to be there. But sometimes, like looking at how much time investment it takes to make very little changes, that's maybe the kind of disengagement where I was there must be a better way. There must be more like fundamental changes, and that's why the kind of the blockchain and crypto kind of technologies for me bring that opportunity to make like a more 10x kind of change than marginal change, and that's what really I think kind of drove me to that world.
Well, kudos to you, Sendi. And I think we're speaking to an audience here who might be in good, large, medium, small organizations where they're certainly, getting to work on a payments system where there are frustrations. What would you say to them? And I'm going to bring back an earlier thing you said as well, which is that XRP and crypto people can consider as dodgy, criminal activity, fraudulent. So let's actually address this. Somebody who, still needs to make sure they've got security in their role, what level of confidence would you give them that if they were to move to a Ripple, that there is a going concern?
So I think, you touched on a really good point, right? Because in the crypto blockchain space, there's like so many different players at different angles, and some really focused on, again, what's the price today and the kind of speculation and have we lost money, have we earned money in and out. And I just say, likes of Ripple is very much around building for the long term, like looking at the promise of the technology and building for the long term. And that's, again, where my kind of interest was. So, for people looking to come into this space, right, it's enough to literally go to any sort of crypto conference that is coming up and look at the backgrounds of the people, of the leaders, right, like talking on stage. You will see that, a good percentage of them have come from more traditional backgrounds. And I think that's a big, honestly, I was surprised when I first saw that, as about a year ago when I came into the space. That I think shows that increasingly more and more people seeing that potential of the technology in the future, and it's not just a hype, and it's not just a another coin popping in, and whether you believe in it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. It gave me a large amount of the conviction to see the just overwhelming top 5% of talent that was flooding in, certainly to start with from a technical perspective, if we go back 3 or 4 years ago, but now individuals like with your profile taking the top roles or the crucial roles in the space is a great sign that the most experienced and high caliber individuals are in this space working on it. And much like we start to see on chain with user cases as well, starting to see them coming through with DAOs, NFTs, in DeFi, where there's actual real projects with traction. So it's a very exciting time, which I think in parallel is perhaps, given where we are, which is in May 2022, where there has been clearly over the last few weeks a massive decrease in the value of tokens just across the board for obvious reasons. Really, I feel that if you're in the space, you've got to be blinkered to it. You've got to understand if you're working on something that's genuine, full of purpose and got traction. You know, we've seen dips before in a year, 2, 3, neither here nor there. But what it probably will do on the trading side, unfortunately, a lot of people have lost a lot of money, but make people start to consider sensibly how to be investing into projects with purpose in preference to just speculatively trying to win on the short term, which is tough even if you're a professional with a full outfit, but if you're an individual, is incredibly hard, right? Yeah. So let's talk about XRP just in brief. You know, it is and has been one of the top 10 coins for as long as I can remember, I think. The valuations obviously of the token massively down over the last couple of weeks, but just in line with every other token. How important is it that XRP stays one of the top tokens for this to work?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I would say we're not, you know, really so much focused on the particular sort of price of XRP or the volatility or any other coin particularly.
That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it has a higher or lower market cap.
So if we look at our, again, on the on-demand liquidity solution, RippleNet, where we are using XRP as a bridge currency, right, to move fiat, you know, around the world, right? That is, you know, regardless of the price of XRP.
All that matters is how many there are. Doesn't matter what the price is.
It's a bridge that we are using as a bridge. So it's not, you know, we're not here really to honestly like speculate and it, you know, it's a means to an end. It's a means to bring that efficiency to the market. So and again, I mean, when these things happen, obviously like prices drop, etc. For me, what's interesting is when I talk to one of our customers, partners, and the benefits they see, right? A customer, Asmo is a, you know, great example. It's one of the big remittance companies. When they can enable their payments, I don't know, Filipino worker paying, you know, from the UK, sending money to their family to pay for food or housing or hospital or whatever it is, and they can do that at a fraction of the cost. You know, at that for me is you know where the big value is. As opposed to, you know, how much XRP is in circulation or not, and you know, okay. I mean.
Well, good. Right answer. Want to just as we kind of close out the show, because you've spent a lot of your very valuable time, which I appreciate. Finish on the point of just mentioned diversity as one of the benefits and inclusion of this technology in Web3. You know, some type of commitment towards making sure that there's equal opportunity for anybody from any background and any gender. What are you seeing at Ripple working well there? Because it sounded like you've got a very diverse operation. Has there been monumental effort for that to happen, or did you fortunately walk into an organization already partly that way? And then just really regardless, the second part of the question is, what would you recommend to anybody who's struggling with this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't think it's just fortune and just by coincidence, right? Again, we are, you know, kind of crypto or fintech, if you kind of even broader, if you think, you know, it comes from financial services technology to traditionally very sort of, you know, white male dominated sector. So, you know, at the cross section of that crypto as well, again, you know, has been known more for, you know, crypto bros, etc. So it's not, you know, by default, if you just let things run, it's not by default sort of maybe very diverse. And I think as industry, we have a role to play, obviously, to make sure that, you know, the mistakes maybe that were done in the sort of more traditional finance and tech, you know, doesn't repeat. I think some of the things that have worked well, or, you know, I would recommend is I think being very intentional and kind of principled about it is important. So there's a whole myriad of things that, you know, we do at Ripple to make sure we do have a not only diverse workforce, because diverse is just the beginning, it's the inclusiveness, right? What happens day to day in that one meeting when somebody speaks up is what really at the end of the day matters. Is, you know, there's a number of policies like, you know, equal parental leave, for example, both males and females. Or, you know, when we do hiring, right, we're very deliberately looking for that diversity, making sure for any, you know, leadership roles, we have at the very minimum, you know, 2 kind of candidates in the slate, in the interview candidate list. And there's, you know, myriad of other things, but it's definitely an important topic. I think, just kind of, sometimes in the industry, I can, hear some people sort of taking pride in that, sort of being part of the crypto bro circle. I think that's really dangerous, right? One, it stops and potentially prohibits, others with more diverse backgrounds coming in, but also it potentially gives us this kind of, situation where we may not be creating products and solutions that will cater to those diverse people around the world. So no, it's a big sort of top of mind for us, as a company, and for me personally, obviously as a woman in the space, it's very important to continue to promote and help others, to join and bring those fresh, different perspectives in.
I love it. I think that there's many things, but two are that you should have, diverse individuals in the leadership positions, because then, the decisions will be held true. And then I think that you should also be really, promoting an ambassador if you're one of the individuals who can inspire such as yourself. So on that point, just to close out, I'm going to just fire through a couple of obscure questions for you so that we get to know who Sendi is a little bit further. If you starred on the cover of Forbes, what would the headline say?
One of the very few sort of women leaders in the crypto space.
A female crypto bro.
That's
I'm joking. We've got to rephrase crypto bro.
Crypto gal.
What could we change bro for? What could bro be changed for? Crypto legend. Crypto human. What is the most important book you have ever read?
Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yep.
I find that book, I read it every couple of years. I find that incredibly, empowering, motivating, inspiring. I think those skills can, you can apply to everything you do, whatever your role you're in, including your personal life. I even went so far ahead to get my kids version of that.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
It's really, really it's all about.
Have you turned it into like wallpaper?
I have a little poster on my wall, to be very honest. Yeah, it is really brilliant. It's all about just prioritization, focus, energy, knowing where you want to do, where you want to get to, how, and it's about also knowing yourself, which is
great tip as well. When you really resonate with something, to refresh and read it like you just said you do every couple of years, because it's so easy for it to be lost. I think when people read, they retain several percent of what they've read. I mean, some is going into the subconscious. So with the great books, to reread them is a brilliant tip. Just because you sounded really passionate about that, is there any others that you'd recommend?
That's the main one popping. I mean, I love biographies, Walter Isaacson. I read quite a few of their leadership bios. It's always inspiring. Yeah.
Well, this is your Lloyd Warhead bio, so let's carry on. What is your most proud achievement?
I think my most proud achievement is just staying true to who I am, sort of at different stages of my career. Again, graduating from schools, there's always like a tide of people going into this or that, banking, consulting. I've always been very entrepreneurial. I'm extremely sort of action-oriented. I need to see kind of the market impact of what's happening, and I've really followed that thread into sort of general management all through my life, and I've always liked sort of doing things a bit different, right? A bit of fresh perspective, and that's again what resonates with me with the crypto blockchain space. I guess that's a thread that's been going through my life and bringing me all the way here. Very inspiring. On that thread, who would you love to listen to on this podcast? That's a brilliant one. I think, there's so many. You just want to re-listen to yours, don't you? I want to listen to my own one. There's so many great ones. I've been listening to, a bunch of your previous ones as well. It seems like you've covered already. So many great leaders in the space. Don't worry, I'm going to chase you up on who you're going to get onto this show. Searching for Mana. What is your biggest fear? My biggest fear is, I guess, not fully realizing my potential. I think something that I've always sort of enjoyed in my life is, pushing always for the next thing, and every time I, go through that and go through a challenge and see great impact on teams and markets, I always think, what else more, right? What more can I do? So I like to push the envelope constantly.
I think when you're in such a, seminal role as you are here, you could go with that mindset to a point of anxiety to not be achieving, which I'm sure you've got some great structures to. But actually what just be interested in is outside of work, when you're trying to switch off from taking the opportunity, is there something that you do, for instance, I might choose to paint because it's just so far removed from anything I'm any good at and any ambitions with, so I can really switch off, which is very hard when you've got a business or you've got a massive role like you do. What do you get up to?
Yeah, I spent a good part of my life dancing.
Oh, wow.
Performing, choreographing. It's almost a big part of who I am. I haven't managed to do it in the last few years, especially COVID has been quite difficult, and now I have kids as well. It's been a bit difficult. But what I love is that I think, for example, adaptability is one thing that I think I really gain, because you're constantly working with a team or your partner and adapting and kind of, again, being true to yourself and finding your own sort of style, but also you have to work with everybody else. But also just, our, again, work day is very much, head and eyes focus, whereas I can literally just close my eyes and dance. And so it's like the contrast of the physical parts of your body that you move as well.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I love that. You're actually dancing with your eyes closed.
Well, if you do tango, Argentine Tango, that's why it's been my favorite in the last years. It's fantastic.
Amazing.
But COVID has definitely taken a toll on that sector.
Well, we'll get back to it soon. So on the Searching for Mana show, final question, what would you say your mana is?
I think my mana is probably the impatience and just wanting things done yesterday. Again, that's always driven me to look at, what's interesting, what's new, not just for me personally, career-wise, but also, with the teams I work with the companies, in terms of that kind of vision of what we drive forward. We all have one life, right? So there's no time to lose. I think that's kind of my mantra that I always live with.
Love it. Well, I'm going to make sure I don't take any more of your time then. I'm scared. Sendi, thank you so much for coming on the show. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.